I'm very thrilled to bring you the next jacket. It's called the Derby Diva jacket. I'm from Louisville, Kentucky. That's the home of the Kentucky Derby. And boy, do we love Derby celebrations at home. So I decided to name a jacket after that. Now, I want to give you a couple of hints on these jackets, but first of all, I want to tell you that in the book are step-by-step directions on how to make the jacket with all the pictures. You obviously are going to start with the master top pattern because we've started all these garments with the master top pattern. And I want you to look at the blouse that's on the dress form behind me. This has the princess lines. Now, if you like this blouse, you can go back to the directions for the princess line and you can see exactly how to do that. I've even used little tiny buttons on this with a tab on the front of it. So I love that blouse. It's really pretty. I like blouses like this because you can use them as jackets as well. So I made a jacket to go over the top of it, and I want to show you this jacket. And it has embroidery work on it for all you ladies that love embroidery work. So I just like the detail on the front of the jacket, but I want to point out one thing. And that's this stripe around the bottom of the jacket. Now, I was told, as a very young woman, that big girls don't wear stripes of any sort. Yes, we do. Stripes are a great detail. So if you look at this, that's just a detail on it. The embroidery work is what you're looking at, but it just kind of separates it. And believe it or not, the detail, the stripe on here, is made from the same fabric as the blouse. So it just kind of brings the two of them together. The jacket I have on is also the Derby Diva jacket, only it's lined. And after this video, you will watch the video on how to line a jacket. Whether you line it or you don't line it is totally up to you. I like lined jackets because they go off and on easier and they're just a little bit more comfortable and they keep the fabric from wrinkling. So let's see what we need first and then we'll talk about fabrics. We're going to need to use patternese to make our new pattern out of. And you remember, I keep telling you this is sold on my website, but you want to make a new pattern for all these different views and different options because then you don't have to go back and try to draw them all over again when you're ready to go. So this is my master sleeve and my master top, front and back. So I want to show you that all you need to do to turn this into a jacket, and in chapter 2 it tells you how to do that, but all you need to turn this into a jacket is add to the center front. How much do you add to the center front depends on you. If you look at the jacket that's behind me, this kisses. There's no buttons or buttonholes. There's no zipper in the jacket. So all I did was add a ½ an inch to the center front of the jacket. And of course you have to add to the side seams because that's a wool piece of fabric. When you add to the center front of this and you put the facing on, those two kiss because it is the center front of you. That's what makes this so much fun. You're creating as we're going along and it really will spark your imagination. Now fabrics, let's talk about fabrics. You can make this out of anything you want to. If you choose to do this out of wool, wool has a lot of body to it, so all I did on this jacket was interface the facing. And I used pattern French fuse. French fuse I sell on my website in black, white, and beige. And it's a tricot fusible interfacing. So I ironed that to the facing of the jacket. And it just gives it a little bit more body. The jacket that I have on, you can see goes all the way up to the neck edge and it has a mandarin collar. But it also has French fuse on it, and that's again what makes it hang nice. Now one of the things that ladies laugh at when they see this jacket is I have buttons and buttonholes in it. I don't button a jacket. I don't zip a jacket, I don't button a jacket. To me, that's just detail on the jacket. So I don't cut my buttonholes open. Now, I know that probably sounds a little strange, but nobody said you had to do that, right? So I don't ever cut them open because I'm not going to use them anyway. So it just makes it lay a lot nicer. When you button and unbutton things, then you get a little dent in your buttonhole. If you button your jackets, by all means, cut them open. So we're going to make a new pattern, and the reason we're going to make a new pattern is this is for the lining and this is for the facing. So this is my actual master pattern, cut up with, let me put it here like this, cut up with the added to the side seam, added to the center front, and this is what I'm going to use to put this back together again. So if you look at it this way, this is your facing, because it's the center front. This is the side part of your jacket, and that's for the lining. So let me show you the jacket first. And this is a really lightweight, it's just a nubby kind of a fabric. I'm not quite sure what's in it because I found it in my stash and I absolutely loved it, because to me it looks like spring. I did French fuse the whole inside of this jacket, and I did that because it's going to lay better and it's easier to work with. Now it did fray, so I've serged all the way around the edges. If you don't own a serger, then do a straight stitch all the way around the edges. You just want to keep them flat while you're working on it. But the French fuse also helps to keep that flat. So you can see that I've taken this pattern that I've used and I V'd off the neck edge. Now, again, if you look at what I have on, it's not V'd off, so this is totally up to you. But I V'd off the neck edge. And then I think you'll see it just a little bit better with the facing and the lining attached to it. And this is the facing and the lining. So there's the lining, and you can see it looks just like the front of the jacket. And if you look at it very carefully, you can see that it's V'd off as well. So when you put a facing into a garment, that facing needs to equal what the garment does. So if you've lowered the neckline of the garment, you need to lower the neckline of the facing as well. When you put the two together, you have a beautifully lined jacket. Now on the picture, you can see that I have told you you could put a ruffle around here. That's a really simple thing to do. Follow the directions. All it is a strip of fabric that I've gathered, and you can stitch it right down the center to put it on your jacket. And I'll see you at the Derby. I have a favorite lining fabric. It comes from Hancock Fabrics, and yes, you can buy this online. It's called Deville, D''V''I''L''E. I love the lining fabric because it's soft, it's not hot, it doesn't wrinkle, but it comes in lots of different colors, 60 inches wide. So that's my favorite lining fabric, but you can choose whatever kind of lining fabric you want. Now we're going to start with the master top pattern. And remember, I told you we're never going to cut this up, so we're going to make a new master, okay? Just copy it over again. But when you do it, you want to copy it over for woven fabric, which means you're going to add to the side seam. You're also going to add to the center front because you need it to have buttons and buttonholes. So we're going to add to the center front. All of that is on the individual jacket pattern direction. So add exactly what that says to do. Now, one other thing I'd like to suggest that you do, because I do this a lot in classes, some people are a little bit leery of working with woven fabric because they don't know if it's going to fit. Here's a really simple way to see how close you are with your pattern. Now again, keep in mind, this is not a really tailored fitted garment. You can see it's a little bit looser fitting. If you want it tailored, then I'm going to suggest you do the princess line, because in the princess line, you can take the bust seam up, you can take the back seam up, and you can tailor it in the waist a little bit more. So that's totally up to you. But if you will just take your front and back on the pattern trace fabric material and baste the shoulder together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, baste the side seam together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to show you what you're going to do with this. You can actually try this on. So I can put this on like this. Yes, you can do this to yourself. And you can do it on your dress form. If you own a dress form, it's a great way to do it. Line this up with your center. You know where your center is because you're looking in a mirror. And you can see very quickly that I have plenty of fabric here to play with. Now, when I say play with, I don't like to use the word alter because I think it scares you all to death. So let's just use the word tweak. When I say play with, I don't know where your waistline is, and you probably don't either till you actually get the jacket or the garment on. You can see that if I start with a 1/2 inch seam, and maybe it's a little big in the hip or a little big in the waist, you can keep taking this in until you're comfortable with the way it looks in the mirror, because that's what we're after, is your comfort and your look. But this is a great way to start. Now, if you follow the directions for the princess jacket, you already have the center front and the side front. But if you're following the directions for the hats off jacket, which I just had on, then you're going to need to make your facing, all right? But this is very simple. This is your facing because it's part of the front of your garment. Follow the line on the pattern itself has a facing pattern, so just follow that line. So whatever is left over will be your side front, and it's going to look like this after you've drawn the side front. Now keep in mind that this has to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and the facing has to have a 1/2 inch, so that when you sew this back together again, it equals what you tried on just a few minutes ago. Now as far as your back facing pattern, you can use your whole back if you want to, or you could create a facing that goes in the back of your jacket. A lot of people like that finished look in the back, and that's really simple. Draw any kind of design you want to. You could do a square if you wanted to. You could do a rounded facing if you wanted to, however you want to do. The only thing is you need to make sure that the facing, let me open this up real quick and show you. The facing, the shoulder of the facing matches the shoulder of the front. So that's all you need to make sure that you do. So now let's cut this out of fabric. You know, a lot of you don't like your finished garment because it doesn't have enough body to it. So you need to think before you sew. I told you I like French fuse. I like to put French fuse on certain fabrics. If you put French fuse, and always try this, always try it on a corner before you put it all over the garment. If you would put French fuse on an entire piece of certain fabrics, you're going to get little lines, wrinkled lines. Now that's because it's woven. It's fine on knit. You won't have that issue, but on woven you will. But this has a nubby feel to it, just like this one has a nubby feel to it. And I like that tailored look. I like welt pockets. I like to put detail on. When you use all this detail, you need to have support for the detail. So I have cut out of my fabric, I have cut out 2 fronts, 2 whole fronts, and I have interfaced both of the fronts. Now, if I were interfacing this for myself, I would have done it in black, but I did it in the cream color so that you could see it just a little bit better. So I have 2 whole fronts, just like the jacket I have on. I have 2 sleeves. I have a whole back that has been interfaced, and that again just gives you support. I have 2 facings, both have been interfaced. And remember that back neck facing that I created? I have that cut out and I have that interfaced. Now I have serged around all of these edges. It's a lot easier if you'll serge around all the edges before you put it together, especially if you're doing this for the very first time, because you may take it in a little bit in certain places, and that way you don't have the 2 edges, the front and the back serged together, so that you'd have to take that apart. So now after you've cut out all of these pieces, it's time to cut out your lining pieces. So for your lining pieces, it's kind of like making another jacket to put inside. You want to cut 2 sleeves out of lining fabric. You want to cut 2 fronts out of lining fabric. I'm sorry, a back out of lining fabric, and then the 2 side fronts out of lining fabric. So that's all you need to cut out of the lining fabric. Now the first thing that we're going to sew together is, let me put this down, and the very first thing we're going to sew together is the facings. So we're going to take the facings, the 2 facings, and we're going to lay those right side up on our table. And I always have people do this to make sure that you're sewing them correctly, because lining fabric really is confusing. You can't tell the right from the wrong side. And I'm going to lay one this way, right side to right side, and one this way. So these are the 2 side front pieces that will be sewn to the facing piece. So that will give you a whole front when you're through with it. So let's sew those together with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. When we cut out the lining, I added a little bit to the center back of this lining so I could have a little bit more movement, but that's totally up to you. You don't have to do that if you don't want to. Now, this pattern notcher is wonderful to notch a mark. It even works on the fabric, as you can see. So I actually notched a mark where that was. So the next thing that I'm going to do is to sew a basting stitch right down the center. Before you sew that, this is what I would suggest you do, is to fold this in like this and press a crease. You know, anything you can do to make your sewing faster and easier is a good thing. So can you see that I can now see exactly where that crease is? So I can fold this fabric right side to right side and baste right on that crease. What that's going to do is, after I've sewn this piece, and let me just fold it this way so that you can see it, to the facing that I cut out a few minutes ago, when I sew that on, can you see that wonderful crease that you've created? And all I have to do is to take the basting stitch out, and I have movement, just a little bit more movement in my jacket. So simple, simple, easy to do as far as the back. As I said before, you don't have to put that pleat in there if you don't want to. That's totally up to you. So now, as far as the front facing, I have sewn that together. So I sewed the lining fabric to the facing, and this is what your two fronts look like. Now, this is when you can have fun if you want to. This is totally up to you. Before you put these two together, you could put piping in there if you wanted to. You could do some fun top stitching on here if you wanted to. It's just a way to jazz up your jacket. I happen to love pockets. I'm a pocket nut. Remember, I'm the one that likes zippers, and I like pockets as well. I like to put pockets on the inside of my jacket. And I like to put fun pockets on the inside of my jacket. And I only need a pocket wide enough to hold an ID or credit card. I don't need it to hold my whole purse. I just need a little one in there. So if you want to do that, what I would suggest you do is to actually stitch that to the facing now when it's not attached to the jacket. So it would be fun to put a little pocket on there. So these are just some fun things that you can do. Now, I'm going to sew this to the back in just a second, but before I do that, I want to tell you that I've gone ahead and I have sewn the shoulder seams of my actual jacket with a 1/2 inch seam, and then I basted my side seams with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I pressed them open. Don't try your jacket on without pressing these seams open, because you're going to have bulk and it's going to be a little misleading. Now I'm going to try it on, because there's no reason to sew the lining together if you know you need to take it in a little bit tighter. Go ahead and try on the jacket itself, because that'll give you a guide as to how you're going to sew the other one. So I'm going to try this on for you, and I'm going to look in a mirror. Obviously I'm looking at you, but I'm going to look in a mirror, and I can see that I like the fit of the jacket. What I don't like, what I see in the mirror, is right here. I don't like that. That's not tailored. And once you put a sleeve in there, that would be very bulky. So what I'm going to do is to take a chalk, and you can do this to yourself. Stand in front of a mirror and draw exactly where you would want that to be. That's where the seam allowance is. That's where the sleeve would actually be sewn into the jacket. Then keep in mind, when you cut anything off and tweak it, you want to make sure that you add a seam allowance to that. So just draw on yourself, because then that way you can see. Use whatever color is easiest for you to see. These chalks come in all different colors. So whatever color is easiest for you to see, that's good. And you only need to do one side or the other. If you're right-handed, do your left side. So then what I'm going to do is, I know where this is going to be. So I would take this jacket, and I would take my basting stitch out. And I'm going to draw on this for you so you all can see exactly where I would be taking this off. So this is where I would want my seam to be. Can you see that? The white on there? I didn't know if you could see the chalk well enough, so I just used some of the tape, the dress form tape, and I taped it on there for you. So can you see how much seam allowance I have? So now this is exactly where I would want this seam allowance to be. I mean the seam to be. So I need to measure a 1/2 inch away from that and cut away the excess. So I'm going to take this off and show you exactly how I'm going to cut the excess. Now, if you feel at all uncomfortable about just cutting your jacket up, what I would suggest you do is to cut it in small increments. cut off 1/4 of an inch, then go back and cut off another 1/4 of an inch, and until you're happy with what you've done. You know, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. So I'm just going to cut this off because I know where the 1/2 inch would be. And I'm only going to cut one side, but I want to show you a little trick. Now I know the back was fine. I know you all couldn't see it. That's what I cut off my jacket. All right. So I'm going to put the jacket back on. I'm going to look back in the mirror and say, yes, I like what I see. Can you see that I don't have as much bulk under there? If you do, you can cut some more off. Then what you're going to do when you're happy with what you've done is to take the one side off like this. Now that's what I cut off. Lay it on the other side like this. Line up the edges. And there's your pattern to cut your other side off so that one side equals the other. Okay, so now I'm going to show you I've tweaked the jacket. And you can see those armholes are much better. All right, so you need to pay very close attention to the armholes, because the armholes, if you've got too much bulk in your sleeve, that really does make a garment look homemade. So I'm ready to finish this jacket. I'm very happy with it. Take out the side seams, pin in the sleeves, and we'll show you how to do that in a second, and then sew the sleeves in, side seam, and you're ready to put the two together. So from here, we're going to go into the lining fabric. And I'm back to the lining jacket again, and you can see that I have sewn the front facing to the side seam, the back neck facing to the back, and I have that pleat in there that we're going to take the basting stitch out in a minute, and then I sewed the shoulder seams together. So there's the shoulder seams. Now, do you remember that I cut away the armhole on the front of the jacket? Well, I took that little piece that I'd cut off, used that as a pattern, and I cut that off of the front of the facing because you want the two to match. You don't want a whole bunch of bulk in the facing, as well as you don't want it in your jacket either. So now what we're ready to do is to put the sleeves into the facing and the sleeves into the jacket. So in order to do that, I'm going to take a sleeve and I'm going to fold it in half like this, and I'm going to find the center of the sleeve. And I'll show you just how to do one. And we're going to do all four exactly the same. And then I'm going to pin this right side to right side. There's no right or left, front or back to this sleeve. So right side to right side, like this. Now I am going to actually pin the cap. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So put a pin in like this. And the cap of the sleeve is literally the cap, and that's all I'm pinning, is that much on both sides. Now if you've taken very many of my classes, you know I don't like to pin. You have to pin this. This is something you have to pin. So I get over it pretty quickly. So let's pin the cap, and then I'm going to show you a little trick. Now, you have probably at some point in your life have done a gathered the cap of the sleeve to fit into the armhole. Well, because we only have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, this makes this a whole lot easier to do. This part of your sleeve will stretch, okay? So I pinned the cap, and the rest of this will stretch into shape very easily, all right? So sew with a 1/2 inch seam. You're going to sew all four sleeves in exactly the same way, and then we're going to sew the side seam. While we're here right now, let's go ahead and measure for the collar that's going to go on this jacket, because I want to put a mandarin collar on it, and you have the mandarin collar directions on the hats off jacket, on the black jacket that I have on. Had on. This one has no collar on it, so you're ready to finish that one if you don't want any collar. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this jacket and I'm going to fold it right side to right side like this, or wrong side to wrong side, whichever one you want to do, like this. Lay it down on your table, and we're going to measure this neck opening, because we're going to make the collar match the neck opening, not the other way around. Most people, what they do is cut out a collar and then pray it goes in there. Let's don't do it that way. Now I want a notch, because if you remember, the jacket I had on had a notch to it. So I had a place where there was no collar. You can bring that collar all the way over to the edge if you want to. It's totally up to you. So I'm going to measure this entire opening by standing the tape measure up just like this. And that measures 18 inches because it was 9 on either side. I'm going to make that collar not 18 inches. I'm going to make it 16 inches so that I do have an area for a notch. So what I'm going to do is to cut this out, and then we're going to lay this on fabric and cut out our collar. And I'll show you how to do that. Now remember, I told you I wanted to make this collar 16 inches long, okay? So you've got to have a seam in it. So I'm going to make it 17 inches long. And what I'm going to do is, you've got the pattern on, this is the pattern, the Mandarin collar comes on the pattern with the hats off to the races jacket. So I'm going to cut this out. I've taken a scrap of my fabric and I put French shoes on the back of it. I'm going to fold it like this. And this is how I'm going to alter the size of the collar. You can either put it on the fold or you can put it away from the fold. Keep in mind that you're going to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance. That's the reason that I'm going to make it 17 inches, not 16 inches finished, okay? So because I need that 1/2 inch seam allowance. So when I put this away like this, I'm going to do it like this, which will give me exactly what I need. So let's just say you had a much smaller neck. You would go this way and take it off of the fold. So you're going to adjust this however you want it, however wide you want it to be. This is the neck edge. This is the top edge. If you want this not as tall, you can always cut away. That's totally, totally up to you, because you get to be the designer of your collar. Both sleeves have been set in, and we've sewn the side seam together. So we've fitted, again, we've tweaked the jacket, like the fit. We're happy with that. So now it's time to put the collar on. So I put the collar right side to right side, and I sewed a 1/2 inch seam all the way around, clipped it, turned it, pressed it, and I have my collar. Fold the collar in half, find the center of the collar, fold the jacket in half, find the center of the jacket, and pin the two together. And that's exactly what I have right there. Now I'm going to pin this half of the collar on. Then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to fold the jacket right side to right side like that, and take the other side of your collar. And remember, I told you the collar matches the jacket. So you're cutting that out afterwards. I'm going to line up the two edges of this collar so that I have the same amount of notch on both sides of this jacket. So the notch is kind of like the free space right here. So pin that in place and pin that all the way around, and then sew it on with a 1/2 inch seam. Okay, now we have the sleeves in, we have the jacket, we have the collar on, and now it's time to tweak it again. So let's try this back on, because I basted that collar on, and I'm going to show you why. Everybody is different. Some people like things really high up on their neck, and some people don't. So if you've basted it on and you put this jacket on and you go, oh no, I can't stand that up that high, take the collar off and trim it. That's all you have to do, is just trim it. Very, very simple, very, very easy to do. So as you can see, if you tweak as you go, it's a whole lot easier than finishing it and then going, now what do I do? So let's just tweak as you go. I like where the collar is, so I'm happy with that. So I'm going to take this jacket off, and there's the collar that's been stitched. All I have to do is to take the neck edge of the lining piece and place these two right side to right side and pin. And I'm going to pin them in place. Line up the shoulder seams, because you remember you've cut this from exactly the same pattern. There's nothing different, nothing fancy. Pin it all the way around, and you're going to sew just the neck edge first. Then you're going to start at the top and you're going to sew all the way down the center front. Go to the other side and sew all the way down. Clip it, clip the neck edge, trim off the edges, turn it, press it, and what do you know? Your jacket is almost done except for the hemming. So let me sew this together and I'll show you some tricks. Okay, now I've turned the whole thing inside out and you can see that that collar is beautifully finished. There's your facing. Now what you want to do is you need to press that center open. So what I'm going to do is to put this on my ironing board like this. Take your hot iron and press this open. Now even though that's going to be pressed shut in a few minutes, press it open first. And I'll show you how much easier. I'll just show you this little bit right here. How much easier once it's pressed open that it will press shut. Now I want to show you one little trick. I'm going to take my lining. Can you see my lining is over here? And here's my jacket. All you have to do is put the sleeve down inside the sleeve. And the sleeve down inside the sleeve. And you have a beautifully lined jacket. Very simple to do. Now, let's take the basting stitch out because we don't need that anymore. So all we have to do is to pull that out. Get that started here. Remove the basting stitch up the center back. And that's going to form your pleats. You can see what a pretty pleat that you're going to have in that. All right. I love a jacket that has a hidden placket. I just think they're really fun to do. So I want to show you how to take the jacket like this and, well, maybe you decide in a couple of months you want to make this a hidden placket jacket. So let me show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to put half of this on the dress form. I've made a strip of fabric that I have completely finished on all three sides. All right. I have closed one thing at the top, but not at the bottom because that would go into the hem. And all I have to do is to line that up with the center front and stitch this on. Your buttonholes will be underneath here and your buttons will be on the other side. So this is what it's going to look like. Let me put the other side up. This is what it's going to look like when it's on. You would have a hidden placket. So it's just a different look to a jacket. It's a fun thing to do, but it's just as easy as stitching on a strip. It's as simple as it comes. So let's line a jacket, ladies, because it's really fun to do. Do you need to line a jacket? Absolutely not. There are a lot of jackets that require nothing at all. There are times when I simply line the sleeves of a jacket and don't even line the body of the jacket. So it's totally up to you as to whether you want to do it or not. Once you start wearing lined jackets, you're going to see it's really fun and it feels really good to wear them. So have fun sewing because this is an easy project. I hope you enjoyed the video. Now it's time to check out the website. Everything is on there. You can purchase the pattern, the book, all the notions I talked about. You can join the Fit Club and check out the classes where I'm teaching. And be sure to follow me on Facebook.